The dust of Oakhaven clung to Elara's boots, like a physical manifestation of the village's judgment, even 2 miles down the winding dirt track that led away from its familiar, now unwelcoming gates. The wind, usually a companionable presence that carried the scent of pine and damp earth, seemed to carry Oakhaven's unspoken condemnation, a chill that had nothing to do with the early autumn air. Beside her, Finn walked with a less burdened stride, though the set of his jaw, a subtle tightening of the muscles, betrayed a similar frustration, a deep-seated weariness from a battle of wills they had long since realized they could not win. They had been escorted from the village by a deputation of elders, their faces grim, their pronouncements firm, their eyes narrowed with a fear they could not quite articulate, a fear of the unknown, of the new, of anything that deviated from the path beaten by generations past. Too much thinking, Elder Thistle had declared, his voice thin as a winter branch, brittle with unspoken anxieties that seemed to plague the entire council. It upsets the natural order, makes folk question things best left unquestioned. He had gestured vaguely at the sky, at the fertile earth, at the very fabric of their simple, unchanging lives, as if Elara and Finn's inquiries were a direct affront to the cosmos itself. Elara, usually quick with a retort, her mind already formulating a precise logical counterargument, had held her tongue. What good would it do to point out, yet again, that her careful observation of water flow and the geological structure of the riverbed had led to their more efficient irrigation system, the one that meant Oakhaven's fields now yielded more grain than ever before, ensuring full larders even in leaner seasons? What purpose would be served by Finn reminding them that his precise calculations, his understanding of torque and stress points, had saved the main mill wheel from collapsing last spring, averting a season of grinding hardship and potential famine? They had learned, painfully and repeatedly, that logic was precisely what Oakhaven now feared. Their intellect, once a source of grudging, even envious admiration when it served the village's immediate needs, had become a perceived threat, an alien force disrupting the comfortable, predictable rhythm of tradition. "We are exiles of inquiry," Finn murmured now, a wry smile touching his lips, a familiar glint in his sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He was a tall man, lean and quick-witted, with hands that, though capable of delicate mechanical work, were currently calloused from days of travel and the recent felling of timber for their temporary shelter. His long, dark hair, usually neatly tied back, was now a little wild, whipped by the wind, mirroring the untamed land they were heading towards. Elara, shorter and sturdier, with a braid the color of autumn leaves that swung against her back with each determined step, snorted softly. Her own hands, nimble and precise for drawing and weaving, were also rough from their journey. Or perhaps, as Old Man Hemlock, with his perpetually squinted eyes and his fondness for ancient proverbs, put it, "Too big for our britches." And the village had to take us down a peg or two before we caused proper mischief. She kicked at a loose stone, sending it skittering into the roadside ditch. They had little with them, 2 sturdy packs, meticulously packed to maximize space and utility, containing their most essential clothes, a few cherished books, volumes on botany, mechanics, and ancient philosophy that Oakhaven had deemed unsettling, a small collection of tools Finn considered indispensable for any serious endeavor, and a small pouch of silver coins. This meager sum was all that remained after Oakhaven's fair compensation for their improvements to the village infrastructure, an amount clearly calculated to be just enough to survive, but not to thrive, to keep them from starving, but not to allow them to prosper. Their destination was a vague spot on an old, faded map Finn had acquired from a traveling peddler years ago. A map that showed a forgotten valley beyond the Whisperwood, a place supposedly too remote, too wild, too utterly insignificant for even the most determined prospectors or the most desperate outlaws to bother with. "At least we have each other," Elara said, nudging his arm with her elbow, a silent reassurance that spoke volumes of their shared bond, a bond forged in mutual respect and shared adversity. "And our wits," Finn added, then sighed, the sound a mix of resignation and a spark of defiant hope, a quiet promise to himself. Though those seem to be precisely what got us into this predicament in the first place. He paused, looking back at the distant smudge that was Oakhaven, now barely visible against the horizon. Perhaps Oakhaven was not truly ready for progress, only for comfort. Perhaps, Elara agreed, but comfort without thought is merely stagnation. We will find a place where thought is valued, not feared. The Whisperwood lived up to its name with an eerie, almost sentient quality. The trees were ancient, towering sentinels whose branches intertwined overhead, forming a dense canopy that filtered the sunlight into shifting, dappled patterns on the forest floor, creating a perpetual twilight even at midday. A constant, soft, rustling sound, like secrets being told on the wind, filled the air, a low, murmuring chorus that seemed to follow them, a living soundtrack to their journey. They navigated by Finn's trusty brass compass, a gift from his scholarly grandfather, and Elara's uncanny sense of direction, a skill she attributed to paying attention to the subtle shifts in the wind, the slope of the land, the growth patterns of moss on tree trunks, and the direction of the water flow in the small streams they crossed. It was a skill that had often confounded the villagers of Oakhaven, who relied on well-worn trails and the sun's predictable arc across a familiar sky. For 5 arduous days, they pushed through the dense forest, their provisions dwindling, their spirits tested by the endless, murmuring trees and the sheer physical exertion. Just as the last of their dried meat was consumed and the last spoonful of flour was scraped from its pouch, they emerged from the tree line into a sight that stole their breath and brought them to an awed halt. The valley lay before them, a wide, bowl-shaped expanse of rolling green hills, carpeted in lush grasses that shimmered in the late afternoon sun, like an emerald jewel nestled between giants. It was bordered by distant, jagged peaks, still capped with streaks of snow, their summits catching the last golden light, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. A river, silver and winding, snaked through the center of the valley, its banks lined with willow and alder, their leaves already beginning to turn a vibrant yellow, hinting at the coming winter. The air was clean, sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth, untainted by human habitation, a pristine wilderness stretching as far as the eye could see. "It is perfect," Elara whispered, a lump forming in her throat. A sudden welling of emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel since leaving Oakhaven, a sense of profound relief and burgeoning hope. Here, there was no judgment, only possibility, an open invitation to create. Untouched, Finn agreed, his eyes sweeping the landscape, already calculating possibilities, mentally mapping the flow of the river, the ideal spots for a dwelling, for fields, for defenses against the elements and any unseen creatures of the wild. And empty. Empty. That was the key, the most crucial element. A place where their minds, their ideas, their incessant need to understand and improve would not be seen as a menace, but simply as a way of being. A place where their unique blend of intellect and practicality could finally find fertile ground, unhindered by suspicion or the suffocating weight of tradition. They found a suitable spot near the river, a gentle slope sheltered by a cluster of sturdy oaks, their branches already heavy with acorns, promising future sustenance. Their first task was to build a rudimentary shelter, a lean-to of branches and leaves that would keep the worst of the weather at bay. It was simple, efficient, and entirely their own design, a testament to their combined ingenuity, even in the face of immediate, pressing need. They worked in comfortable silence, the only sounds the rhythmic thud of Finn's axe as he felled small trees, the rustle of leaves as Elara gathered insulating materials, and the distant, soothing murmur of the river, a constant, gentle companion. By nightfall, a small, surprisingly sturdy shelter stood ready, a temporary haven against the vastness of the valley. The first few weeks were a blur of strenuous labor and quiet satisfaction, a rhythm of work and thought that felt deeply right to them both. They quickly moved from the lean-to to building a more permanent cabin, using logs they felled themselves from the abundant pines that grew on the valley slopes, notched and fitted with a precision that would have impressed any carpenter, let alone two exiles with limited tools. Finn designed a clever system of interlocking joints that required no nails, only careful measurements and strong hands, a testament to his innate understanding of engineering principles. Elara, meanwhile, with her sharp eye for fertile ground, discovered a rich, dark soil near the river where the sun fell just so, creating a natural sun trap. She began turning it into a garden, carefully tilling the earth, coaxing forth a surprising bounty of wild greens and roots she recognized from her botanical studies, supplementing their meager hunting and foraging. Their shared intellect, once a wedge between them and Oakhaven, now bound them closer than ever, a powerful engine driving their progress. Finn would sketch out a design for a new tool, perhaps a more efficient digging implement, or a better way to split logs, and Elara would immediately see a potential flaw in its leverage, or suggest an improvement in its ergonomics he had overlooked. Elara would describe a problem in the garden, perhaps a pest infestation, or a nutrient deficiency in the soil, and Finn would devise a solution, often involving a repurposed piece of scavenged metal or a clever application of leverage and natural repellents she had theorized about. They were a symphony of thought and action, each note complementing the other, each challenge met with a shared enthusiasm for problem solving. They worked from dawn until dusk, their bodies aching, but their minds invigorated, fueled by strong coffee and the quiet joy of creation. of shaping their world with their own hands and intellect. One evening, as they sat by their crackling fire, the scent of roasting rabbit filling the crisp autumn air, the stars a brilliant canopy overhead, Finn looked up from a schematic he was drawing in the dirt with a stick, meticulously outlining a complex water wheel design. "We cannot just be subsistence farmers forever, Elara. We need something more. Something to sustain us beyond mere survival. Something that truly uses our particular talents. Something that demands our full attention and ingenuity." Elara nodded, stirring the embers with her own stick, watching the sparks dance upwards into the night. Something that Oakhaven would never have conceived of. Something that allows us to build, to innovate, rather than just endure the cycles of nature. Something that truly reflects who we are. They talked long into the night, their voices low, their ideas sparking like embers, illuminating the darkness around them. They considered specialized crops that would thrive in the valley's unique microclimate, intricate crafts that could be traded for essentials in distant settlements, even a system of coded messages and specialized homing pigeons for distant trade routes, should they ever establish them. But nothing felt quite right. Nothing ignited the peculiar blend of intellectual curiosity and practical application that was their shared hallmark, their defining characteristic, the very essence of their being. Then, as the fire dwindled to glowing coals and the moon cast long shadows across the valley, Elara remembered a book she had read years ago, a dusty tome on exotic animals she'd found in the back of a traveling scholar's wagon, a book that had fascinated her with its descriptions of creatures from faraway lands. "Alpacas," she said, almost to herself, the word tasting strange and wonderful on her tongue, an echo from a forgotten page. Finn paused, his stick in midair, a furrow appearing between his brows, then quickly smoothing out as curiosity took hold. "Alpacas? The woolly beasts from the high mountains? What do we know of alpacas, Elara, beyond a few faded illustrations and fanciful descriptions?" "Very little, in truth, from direct experience," Elara admitted. "But the book described their wool as incredibly fine, warmer than sheep's, softer than silk, a truly luxurious fiber. And they are hardy. They thrive in harsh, high-altitude environments, much like these mountains surrounding us. They are also known for their gentle temperament. And," she added, a mischievous glint in her eye, knowing exactly how to pique his interest, how to appeal to his love of a good challenge. "They are notoriously intelligent creatures, capable of learning, of discerning, of forming bonds with their keepers." Finn's grin spread, slow and wide, chasing away the last shadows of Oakhaven's judgment, illuminating his face with a spark of pure, unadulterated excitement. His eyes, usually analytical, now held a glint of adventurous possibility. "Intelligent, you say? Well, that settles it then. We shall be alpaca farmers, the world's first, perhaps, in these parts. An entirely new venture, built on principles of intelligent husbandry. Oakhaven would simply never understand." "Precisely," Elara said, her own smile mirroring his, a shared understanding passing between them. "And we will prove them wrong, not with words, but with wool." The decision made, the next challenge was acquisition. Alpacas were rare in these northern lands, usually found only in traveling menageries or the estates of the very wealthy, kept as curiosities rather than for their utility. But Finn, with his knack for unusual connections and a memory like a steel trap, remembered a grizzled trapper he had once met, Old Man Willow, who spoke of a small herd kept by a reclusive mountain tribe far to the west, beyond a treacherous range of peaks known only as the Dragon's Teeth, a place few ventured and even fewer returned from. It was a dangerous journey, weeks of travel through untamed wilderness, through lands rumored to be home to more than just bears and wolves. Tales of mountain giants and elusive shadow cats whispered around campfires. But the idea, the sheer intellectual thrill of it, had taken root in their fertile minds, blossoming into an undeniable purpose. Their combined intellect quickly devised a plan, meticulously detailing routes, supplies, potential dangers, and contingency measures for every conceivable mishap. Finn, with his knowledge of mechanics, navigation, and wilderness survival, would lead the expedition, his keen eyes scanning for trails and dangers. Elara, with her deep understanding of animal behavior, her talent for bartering, and her keen observational skills, would handle the acquisition and initial care of the animals, ensuring their safe passage. They would leave the farm in its nascent state, trusting that the valley would protect their cabin and garden, and that their ingenuity would bring them back, perhaps with a new, woolly future in tow. They departed with a carefully calculated load of supplies, dried meat, flour, a small amount of their precious silver for trade, a sturdy hunting knife, and a detailed map drawn by Finn, marking every landmark, every potential danger, every likely water source, a masterpiece of cartography born of scattered information and keen deduction. The journey was arduous. They faced treacherous mountain passes where narrow trails clung to sheer cliffs, and a single misstep could mean disaster. They navigated dense forests where sunlight rarely touched the ground, where the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. They outsmarted a hungry wolf pack using a clever diversion Elara devised, involving strategically placed bells and a series of echoing shouts that convinced the predators a much larger, more formidable party was approaching. They lived off the land, foraging for berries and edible plants Elara identified with unerring accuracy, and hunting small game with Finn's expertly crafted bow, always mindful of their dwindling provisions. After nearly a month of relentless travel, their clothes worn thin and patched, their bodies aching with a deep, pervasive fatigue, they finally found the tribe. They were a peaceful people, the Sky Dwellers, living high in the mountains in dwellings carved into the rock face itself, their lives intertwined with their small, shaggy herd of alpacas, which grazed on the sparse, hardy mountain grasses that somehow managed to thrive in the thin air. Elara, with her gentle demeanor and genuine curiosity about their way of life, her respectful questions about their traditions and their animals, quickly won their trust. She spent days observing the alpacas, learning their habits, their calls, their needs, demonstrating her profound respect for the animals and the tribe's ancient husbandry. Finn, meanwhile, offered his skills, repairing a broken water wheel that ground their meager grains, showing them how to build a stronger, more efficient loom for weaving alpaca wool, introducing them to principles of mechanics and leverage they had never considered, vastly improving their daily lives. The exchange was fair, built on mutual respect and shared knowledge, a testament to the power of open minds. For their services and a portion of their silver, the tribe agreed to part with a small breeding pair, a gentle female named Luna, with wool the color of moonlight, and a sturdy male named Saul, whose coat was the deep gold of a setting sun. The parting was amicable, marked by shared meals, heartfelt thanks, and a deeper understanding between two vastly different cultures, united by a shared appreciation for ingenuity and the natural world. The journey back was even slower, as they carefully guided their precious cargo through the wilderness. Luna and Sul, surprisingly docile and intelligent, learned quickly to follow commands, a testament to Elara's patience and the alpaca's inherent cleverness. They even seemed to understand the urgency of their journey, moving with a steady, uncomplaining gait, their large, expressive eyes seeming to take in the world around them with a quiet curiosity, a testament to their adaptability and keen awareness. Elara walked beside them, talking softly, reassuring them, building the first bonds of what would become a deep and lasting connection. Finn walked ahead, ever vigilant, his hand often resting on the hilt of his knife, but his heart lighter than it had been in months. Returning to their valley, Elara and Finn felt a profound sense of homecoming, a feeling far deeper and more resonant than any they had ever known in Oakhaven. The cabin stood as they had left it, sturdy and welcoming, a beacon of their nascent dreams. The garden, thanks to Elara's careful planning, was thriving under the benevolent sun, offering a bounty of late-season vegetables. And now they had Luna and Saul, the foundation of their new life, the living embodiment of their audacious dream, the first threads of their future. Their alpaca farm was born not of tradition, but of innovation, a deliberate rejection of the stagnant ways of Oakhaven. Oakhaven's farmers relied on brute force, inherited knowledge passed down without question, and a deep-seated suspicion of anything new or different. Elara and Finn relied on observation, experimentation, and their unique intellectual synergy, a constant dance of idea and execution. Finn designed an ingenious system of rotating pastures, calculated to optimize grazing and prevent overgrazing, using a series of simple yet robust, movable fences that could be quickly erected and dismantled, allowing the land to recover naturally. He built a specialized shearing shed, complete with a foot-powered winch and a series of carefully placed ropes that made the process less stressful for the alpacas and more efficient for them, minimizing the effort required and maximizing the quality of the fleece. He even devised a custom-built cart for transporting feed and water, its wheels designed to distribute weight evenly across the soft valley soil. Elara, meanwhile, became an expert in alpaca care. She studied their diet, their health, their personalities, meticulously documenting every observation in her journal, building a comprehensive understanding of their needs. She developed a complex system for sorting their wool, separating it into different grades based on fineness, length, and crimp, a process that revealed a surprising variety and quality even in Luna and Sol's initial fleeces. She even began to experiment with natural dyes, using berries, bark, and roots from the surrounding forest to create a palette of vibrant hues: deep indigos from wild indigo plants, rich reds from madder root, earthy greens from lichen, carefully recording her recipes and processes, creating a vibrant tapestry of color that would soon become their trademark. Their alpaca herd grew slowly but steadily, each new cria a testament to their careful husbandry and the valley's nurturing environment. Soon, Luna had her first cria, a tiny, fluffy creature named Stella, whose wool was a creamy white, like a cloud against the green hills. Sewell, ever the watchful patriarch, took to his role with quiet dignity, guarding his growing family with a calm, steady presence. The alpacas themselves seemed to thrive under Elara and Finn's care. They were not just animals to be exploited for their wool. They were partners in an experiment, intelligent creatures whose needs were understood and met with meticulous attention. Elara often found herself talking to them, explaining her plans for the day, describing the new feed mixture she was trying, and sometimes she swore. They listened with understanding in their large, dark eyes, their ears swiveling to catch her words, a quiet dialogue unfolding between human and animal. Word of their unusual farm, however, began to spread, carried by the occasional traveler who dared to venture into the remote valley. Traveling peddlers and occasional prospectors, drawn by the valley's isolation and rumored untouched resources, stumbled upon the Durst homestead. They saw the thriving garden, the sturdy cabin, the ingenious workshop, and most remarkably, the growing herd of elegant, woolly creatures grazing peacefully in the carefully managed pastures, a sight utterly unlike anything they had ever encountered. One such peddler, a garrulous man named Silas, with a weathered face and a perpetually curious gleam in his eye, was particularly captivated. He had never seen such fine wool, not even from the most prized sheep in the eastern markets, which he frequented. Elara showed him samples, explaining the different grades, the natural dyes, the unique properties of alpaca fiber, its warmth, its lightness, its hypoallergenic qualities. Silas, a shrewd businessman with a keen eye for quality and an even keener nose for profit, immediately saw the immense potential. "Ah, this is finer than anything from the sheep back east," he declared, rubbing a sample between his fingers, his eyes alight with avarice and wonder. Softer than a whisper, warmer than a hearth fire. People would pay a fortune for this, Elara. A fortune. He saw the silks of far-off lands, the velvets of noble houses, and knew this alpaca wool could rival them all. He proposed a trade agreement. He would take their processed wool to distant towns and cities, to wealthy merchants and discerning artisans, where its unique quality would command high prices, and in return, he would bring them supplies they could not produce themselves, metal tools of superior quality, specialized seeds for new, more exotic crops, rare books for their insatiable minds, and even more alpaca breeding stock if they desired to expand their herd, carefully chosen for their genetic strengths. It was a risk. It meant exposing their carefully guarded existence, allowing their creations to enter the wider world, potentially drawing unwanted attention from those who might seek to exploit their ingenuity. But it also meant growth, expansion, and the opportunity to truly test the limits of their ingenuity, to prove the worth of their intellect on a grander scale than they had ever dared to imagine. After much discussion, weighing the risks against the rewards, carefully calculating every variable, Elara and Finn agreed. They devised a detailed accounting system with Silas, ensuring fair trade and clear communication, a system so precise it left no room for misunderstanding or deceit. Finn even designed a series of coded messages for their transactions, just in case their unique brand of intelligence still ruffled feathers in other, less enlightened communities, or in case unscrupulous competitors tried to intercept their communications. They were careful, always careful, but they were no longer afraid to put their minds to work, to let their ideas reach beyond the confines of their valley. The alchemist's alpaca farm, as Silas began to call it, in his travels, a name that perfectly captured the blend of science and magic he perceived in their work, flourished beyond their wildest expectations. The demand for their wool grew exponentially, reaching markets far beyond the wildest dreams of Oakhaven. Elara's natural dyes became renowned for their vibrant, lasting colors, her recipes sought after by skilled weavers and fashion houses. Finn's innovative tools and breeding techniques led to a herd of exceptionally healthy, productive alpacas, each generation producing finer, softer wool than the last, a testament to his careful genetic selection and environmental management. Their farm became a testament to what could be achieved when intellect and imagination were allowed to flourish, unfettered by suspicion or fear. They built more sophisticated structures, a proper shearing shed with a system of pulleys and levers that minimized effort, a larger barn with carefully designed ventilation, even a small, efficient workshop where Finn crafted specialized tools for their growing enterprise, constantly refining his designs, creating new implements that simplified complex tasks. They developed a complex irrigation system for their ever-expanding fields, drawing water from the river with a wind-powered pump, and a minimal environmental impact, ensuring their crops thrived without overworking the land. Their days were filled with purpose, their minds constantly engaged in a joyful dance of discovery and creation. Elara experimented with new feed mixtures, analyzing the effects on wool quality and alpaca health, meticulously documenting her findings in her journals, which grew thicker with each passing season. Finn devised a wind-powered pump to draw water from the river to a storage cistern higher up the slope, eliminating the need for manual labor for watering animals and gardens, harnessing the very forces of nature to their advantage. They read every book Silas brought them, devouring knowledge from distant lands, applying new ideas to their unique situation, constantly learning, constantly improving, their minds a vibrant, living engine of progress. They had found their place, not in the stifling confines of a village that feared their minds, but in the boundless potential of their own ingenuity. The valley, once a refuge, had become a laboratory, a canvas for their ideas, a living testament to the power of unbridled thought, a haven where intelligence was celebrated, not condemned. Sometimes, Silas would bring news of Oakhaven. The village, without their innovative irrigation and mill repairs, had begun to struggle. Crops were less bountiful. The mill often broke down, its old parts failing without Finn's regular maintenance, and the elders, stubbornly clinging to tradition, refused to seek outside help, blaming their misfortunes on newfangled ideas and the unnatural cleverness that had once resided among them. The irony was not lost on Elara and Finn, though they took no malicious pleasure in it, only a quiet, melancholic understanding. They banished us for thinking too much, Elara mused one evening, watching Luna graze peacefully in the twilight, her soft wool glowing faintly in the fading light, a creature of beauty and utility. And now, Their lack of thinking is their undoing. Finn, polishing a newly crafted shearing blade with a fine cloth, nodded, his expression thoughtful, tinged with a touch of sadness for the village they had left behind. Perhaps one day they will learn, or perhaps they will simply continue to fear what they do not understand and slowly fade into obscurity, a relic of a time that refused to adapt. He looked at Elara, his eyes reflecting the firelight from their hearth, a warmth that had nothing to do with the outside temperature, a warmth that spoke of shared dreams and enduring partnership. But we, my dear Elara, we understand, and we build, and we thrive, and that, in itself, is a victory. Elara smiled, a deep, contented smile that reached her eyes, crinkling the corners. She reached out and stroked Luna's soft, moon-colored wool, feeling the gentle warmth beneath her fingers. The alpaca nudged her hand gently, a silent acknowledgement, a bond forged in mutual respect and understanding that transcended species. They were home. Their minds, once a burden, were now their greatest asset, their most prized possession. And their farm, born of exile and nurtured by intellect, was a vibrant, thriving testament to the power of human ingenuity, nurtured by the quiet wisdom of intelligent, woolly beasts. The secrets of the Whisperwood were theirs to unlock. One brilliant idea, one soft fleece, one contented alpaca at a time, creating a legacy that Oakhaven, in its fear, could never have imagined. A legacy woven from wit and wool.